Well, ain't this swell? You know, I had other stuff to do today, but sure, I'll deal with this. I was already planning on doing a follow-up to the original Ozzy Fox video, because there is so much misinformation around it. And my initial Ozzy Fox video was just me like immediately after I looked at the news. So there's a bit more that I wanted to clear up with it anyway. So we will do some of that in this video. We will talk about some of the other misconceptions about Ozzy Fox. One thing that we also will learn in this video after I talk about all the like taking down and this other crazy stuff is I did find how the AI in Ozzy Fox works, and I have more transparency on how it works. So we will discuss that later. So stay tuned. But obviously we got to get the headline out of the way. Video unavailable. Copyright claim, I guess you would call it. It's not a copyright strike. I'm okay. I'm all right. This has never happened to me before. This is probably a bit of a rite of passage for us YouTubers, I'm sure. You know, I gotta say, I almost feel like a real YouTuber with it, you know? Sometimes even as I'm really starting to move forward with this stuff, you always get a little bit of imposter syndrome, like this really makes me feel alive, because this is what it is. This is the job. This is the biggest risk of this job, is that you put so much into it and something like this can just kind of tank you. Yeah, I've never had a problem with copyright. It's never happened to me. I've been making videos I started with gaming. Gaming doesn't really get copyrighted, but like since I started doing media analysis, my main channel, I've been doing that for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years now. And I have never gotten copyrighted. My videos always, they cover SpongeBob mostly, but I've covered Disney movies. I've covered all sorts of stuff. I always use footage. I'm very careful with how much of the footage I use. I do have a lot of respect for the concept of fair use. You've seen me on this channel. I've criticized the channel No Villains Are Safe, where they manipulate fair use and commentary to just use like the show, like Family Guy or something. They'll like barely recap it and show a bunch of clips, and like that's what I criticize No Villains Are Safe for doing. So like, I think that this is kind of an example of how it's really hard to meaningfully address like copyright anything without it just going too far. Why are people saying $4? I did not make $4 from that video. You want to know how much it probably would have made? How much I stand to lose? It's not that bad. I would say a video with these views of this average view duration, I would say this video, if I don't get monetized for it, I would say I would lose about $250. And like, there's also the fact that this video could have blown up. It could have gone like, because it's the most viewed video currently on the Jackson Family Podcast channel in only 2 days. It was a very big breaking news story. I'm not the only person that this has happened to. So I woke up this morning and I saw like that it like got blocked or this or that, and I like kind of I didn't think I was gonna like immediately address it. I thought that I would kind of, because I was already planning on doing a follow-up for Ozzy Fox, so I just thought I would kind of like slightly address it, maybe see how like the dust settles, if like it's just like, oh, it was like a mistake or something like that. But then I saw that there were 2 other channels that covered it. And by the way, like throughout this stream, I'm like trying to like show so little. Like I don't even want to show like the Ozzy Fox character, I put it in the thumbnail and I was nervous enough about that. I don't think they'll get me for it being in the thumbnail. And it needed to be in the thumbnail because people need to know what I'm talking about. This is the problem. Like, where if you like feel like you can't show the thing that you're talking about, it severely limits how much you can talk about it. Like, so, but throughout this video, I'm really going to try and not show like anything. And you know me, like I like to show people what I'm talking about, and I show very little of what it is, but I show just enough. I was just looking to see if it happened to anyone else. So I just looked Ozzy Fox AI, and from very little looking, I saw that this one, LPS Cream Collie 78, they did a video on it at around the same time as me. They were doing very well with it. They actually had I think they were going on like over 70K views on it, especially for a channel of their size. I think they have I don't know how many subscribers they have. They have fewer than me, but they were or fewer than my main channel at least. And they had a re-upload. So they got theirs taken down and they had a re-upload, and the re-upload is like, when I saw it was under 1,000 views. So they just took like immediate action to try and get the video back up there. I am electing to wait myself. I want to see if the dispute just goes through and if it just gets put back up. That's what I think is going to happen, by the way. If it doesn't, then I'll probably do what that person did, and I will just go in and edit it and post a new version and just be, like, that'll just be for, I guess, the fans of the channel that want to see it and didn't get a chance to see it, because it certainly would not get the same amount of views if something got 40,000 views in 2 days, like my video did. Like, it's going to, you re-upload it and the people who already watched it now don't click on it because they already watched it. And now YouTube thinks, oh, people aren't as interested in this video. And then it's a whole thing. So it really screws you up. So that's why I'm just kind of hoping it just gets like reinstated and just kind of moves forward. It's not my most profitable video this month. But still, it's like, it's not fun. It's not fun to lose $250, The other one that got copyrighted is something called Cartoon Hangout. I don't know any of these channels. I don't know them very well. They look fine. Like, they look like they're channels that are critical of the whole AI thing. I didn't watch either of their original videos, so I can't really speak for what they said in their videos. I'm just saying that there are other people who have reported on this that got taken down. Cartoon Hangout, theirs was a short, and they said that it was very odd that a short got blocked. I don't really make shorts. I've tried a couple of times. They generally weren't really worth my time. Apparently, it's, according to this Cartoon Hangout person, it's apparently very weird for a short to be blocked, in the sense that, like, they don't want people to see it. Usually what happens with a short is the monetization gets funneled to the like original copyright holder. That's at least according to Cartoon Hangout, that's what they said. Again, it's never happened to me. So that is odd that it's actually like blocking it. That it's like, it's not so much that it's like, oh, like you're getting like copyrighted and the revenue goes to, because that's usually the story, right? With a YouTuber who gets a copyright on something, is they're mad because the video's still up, but they're not making money. It's going to the people who own the copyright. Another thing that's weird about this is that it didn't claim a specific part of my video, because my video was not me going through the entirety of the preschool song and like reacting to it. In fact, I didn't play the music from the song. I played very little audio of it. And it was not a live stream. Usually the videos on Jackson Finlay podcast are edited down live streams from the main channel. For Ozzy Fox, I chose specifically to not record it as a live stream. And the reason I didn't record it as a live stream is because I was concerned about copyright, is because I didn't want to watch a high profile Disney show, even if it is on YouTube. I didn't want to watch it live and try to navigate pausing it correctly and like worrying about getting copyrighted like midstream. That was why that was not a stream. I did the same thing when I covered the Shrek 5 trailer. Like, so sometimes so when I do that, it's because I was concerned about copyright. So I cut around very specifically to show very little of the footage. Like, the most of the speaking that there was when I showed off that the father in the Ozzy Fox, the dad, his mouth was not synced to the words properly. Like, the words were not lining up with his mouth. His mouth sync was off. And I criticized that because they were saying like AI show, and I'm like, oh, like they cut corners. So like, that's why his mouth sync was off. People were telling me that is because Animaj is in France and Spain. They have like offices in France and Spain. So the original speech might have been in French or Spanish, which would have different mouth sync. I don't know if that's true. I think it's a little odd that if you're like, we're the AI show, look how efficient our AI is, you're going to have something like that is dubbing issue. I don't know. It could be true. It's strange. Anyway, that was the most I put the like sound, and it was 3 seconds. I usually put up to 6 seconds in like of a SpongeBob episode, of anything comparable, of Disney movies. You know, like I mean I just did live action Moana. That was what I just covered. I mean, I could only use the trailer footage from the actual live action movie, but I had tons of footage from Moana, the original movie. Way more of the Moana movie is in that video than Ozzy Fox is in this video. So very odd, very strange. I am not a conspiratorial person. And the reason that I'm not is because I am someone who has gone very out of my way to learn how to identify patterns and to learn how to identify behaviors and to learn how to come up with reasonable explanations for why things happen. For example, I said in this video that got blocked that one of the reasons that big companies push AI in the arts is because they hate the arts. They want the arts to fail. Like, it's not all about money. It is about that the arts challenge power, and people with power want to weaken the arts because the arts challenge power. Now, you might think that that is a conspiratorial belief. But a conspiracy would mean that I claim that there are shadowy boardrooms of people trying to make that happen, that it's a spoken thing. And that's actually not what I think when I claim that. What I do think is that there is an attitude from people in power that they hate the arts. They don't speak it out loud. They don't go into boardrooms and say, here's how we destroy the arts. They just feel that way about the arts, and that leads them to embracing AI. That is what I mean when I say that. And that is not a conspiracy. That is an identification of what I think human nature is causing this thing to happen. And I could be incorrect about that, and there are ways that you could argue against that, but that is not conspiratorial. With something like this, like, the first thought is like, are they trying to silence people talking about this? And I don't know, man. I really don't think that Disney or Animaj are out there feeling threatened by my video. I really don't. I don't think my singular video is really a threat to them. Maybe I could be broadly, depending on how big I get and how much of an influence I have over like people's perceptions of AI, maybe. But even that, like, just the idea that there's some big executives in boardrooms that care about my video, I think that I'd have to be pretty arrogant to think that that's what's going on here. You know, as much as I kind of titled the video that, like, ooh, Disney doesn't like me talking about their AI show, but that's just a punchy title. Can't argue with a punchy title. So something I said in the original video was that a big problem with this whole Ozzy Fox thing is that there is a ton of misinformation around it. And my video was a way of not trying to rectify the misinformation with correct information, only because at the time I did not have the correct information. I want people to have the correct information. And I think today I do have a lot of correct information. But I think what I really wanted to achieve with that video was just to tell people, hey, there's a lot of misinformation about this, so that when people look at Ozzy Fox, they look at it with a raised eyebrow, rather than all of the Reddit posts that I saw that were like, this is an AI generated show. And everyone thinks that the characters are AI generated or this or that, when that is not what is going on. I even kind of take issue with that. I feel compelled to call this an AI show, which is also in the title of this stream, of this video, this AI show, but that's what everyone is calling it. So I can't just not call it an AI show when that's how people are going to understand it to be that. Like, when you hear Disney made an AI show, You think that they typed in a prompt that said, make me a show where foxes sing about cleaning up their room. And then the AI just did it for them. This is what is in the majority of people's minds when they see a headline that says Disney released its AI produced animated series. And that could not be further from what it actually is. And this is bad for a lot of reasons. It's bad for one, because I think people misunderstand how AI is not capable of a lot of things. And this makes them think that AI is capable of generating a Fox character that is of the quality of the characters in this show. And they do, like, I had criticisms of their designs, sure, but just from an artistic standpoint, it was not, and these designs are bad because they're AI, because they literally aren't AI. And it's not even the kind of thing where it's like, oh, they're so bad they might as well be AI. No, they are better than what AI could make because they were made by people. They were made by real artists who have talent. But people will look at it and they will think that they are generated because people don't know. Like we've literally, my biggest go-to example of how people don't understand what AI is capable of is people who say that AI will one day create season 8 of Game of Thrones. They're gonna have AI rewrite and generate a new version of season 8 of Game of Thrones because the original season 8 of Game of Thrones is so bad. And that claim tells us two things. One, that the kind of person who is making that claim is the kind of person who thinks that the only thing that was wrong with Game of Thrones was season 8. There were problems with that show way before season 8. If you wanted to regenerate the show to make it better, you would have to start way earlier than that. But also, it also shows that someone just thinks that that could be possible, and it really can't be. There is no and when I say like impossible, I literally mean like impossible. Like not like we're limited by our imagination or whatever, like, or ooh, like the technology can't get there. I mean like that is literally impossible in the sense, unless you made a thing that was alive and did that work for you, but it was a robot and it had like robot capabilities, but it would have to be alive. Like it would have to, like, that is a requirement for what would be able to create that. And the people who argue that, they think that like an LLM will just be able to do that, and it's not true. And something like this misinformation about Ozzy Fox will make people think that, and that's really what my video was about. So I think that there are certain people in Disney or behind the scenes, these sorts of big suit corporate types who have an interest in using AI in the arts for whatever reason, whether that be, just because they're greedy or something more sinister that they hate the arts or something like that. Probably a combination of both. And these groups have a vested interest in people not really understanding what AI is. And I think that that is why there was so much misinformation about Ozzy Fox. Something that they are trying to normalize is not the generating of movies from scratch. This is not a real thing that anyone, at least anyone who's being taken seriously, is pushing for. Like, this is not a real problem. Like, you can look at people on Reddit who will like post some like, Captain America fighting Shrek made with Sea Dance 2.0, and they'll be like, Hollywood is cooked. This is going to be movies now. And like, there are people who say that, and those people are dumb, and we can debunk them, but that's not a real problem right now. That is not an actual issue that is happening. What is actually happening is, the term would be AI assisted workflow is the thing that is trying to be pushed. So when you have something like Ozzy Fox, where people don't understand how it was made, but they see the word AI and it's AI workflow, that muddies what like amount of AI can be used in the workflow. Because that's how they will get away with weakening the arts, is having things that are AI sneak their way into stuff, and then they put enough human stuff above it so that you don't notice, but they still get away with it. That's all, like, because AI is all schemes. It's all schemes and smoke and mirrors and trying to convince you that it's not AI. That's like a very weird, like, isn't that weird that everything that is AI, its whole thing is trying to convince you it's not AI? Like, that's not what animation was when it was invented. When they started making animated movies in the 1930s, they didn't make animated movies to try and trick you into thinking that they weren't animated movies. AI is always trying to convince you that it's not AI, except for sometimes where something that kind of isn't AI tries to convince you that it is AI. Before we get deeper into the discussion, I made a little meme for the occasion. I had this in my head and I just needed to put it out there. I hope you enjoy. This is where we're at. All right. I am here in the comment section of the original video. I actually put a little, you'll see there's a little black bar over here. I'm literally covering up the thumbnail because the thumbnail had the Ozzy Fox character in it. And if what they got me for was that the still image of the character is enough, so I can't even risk it. That's probably a bit of an over precaution, but I don't want to take any risks. All right. So in order to properly move forward with this discussion, I want to talk about what Ozzy Fox actually did, I think, with AI. I got a lot more info about it. One of the things that I criticized Ozzy Fox for was a lack of transparency. That we see a thing that says this is an AI produced animated series, and it was only the videos themselves of the show. There wasn't a video next to it that was, here's how we made it. Now, are you as a creator under obligation to put a description or to put a walkthrough of how you made something when you put it out there? I wouldn't say so. Not really. That's a bit of a big ask for a lot of things. However, I do think it's a bit tone deaf for you to not do that with something like this and leave everyone confused when you know people are going to ask this question. And I also think that if you are, from Disney and Animaj's perspective, if this is a technology that you want to promote, that you want to push, that you want to say is fine, is not a big deal, you should probably want to promote how it's made next to it. Like, I think it would have been in their best interest to do that. So I do think that them not doing that is a way of allowing misinformation to spread through inaction, not so much them trying to, through action, spread misinformation. That makes sense. I think that they want it to be a little more cloudy. Now, while there is not a video that I know of that says how Ozzy Fox was created, there is a video on the process in which Ozzy Fox is created with, I think. Again, this is so I don't spread misinformation. You need to take so much of a grain of salt on like all of this. This is so difficult to cover because of how much we don't know about this, because again, that's the whole game. And I think the fact that they're taking down videos on it, I think even shows that that's got to be a part of it, is the not knowing, the not understanding, the misinformation is a part of normalizing AI in the arts. I think like there's got to be at least some of that here. There is a video on the AI that this company uses. Again, I don't know if it's used for Ozzy Fox specifically. I think just for the sake of argument, we just need to assume that it is. This commenter was very interested in getting at the truth. I really appreciate this commenter. They were very thorough. I had other commenters that were similar, and I appreciate them too. There were a lot of commenters that did really want to get at the truth, get at the bottom of this. And this person linked me a video that showed off like how the AI works. And I don't want to show it. Like I wish I could show it. Like I wanted to show it. It's from Animaj specifically, and it says that Animaj took down my other video. So I feel like if I show anything that's Animaj, I feel like they're gonna try to nuke it. Like so I don't know. It would have been a lot more useful for me to show you the video and like actually like comment on it specifically. But I think I'll just have to tell you what I remember from seeing in the video, and we'll just have to make do with that. I will link the video itself in the description of this, the video that I'm talking about, so that you can go see it yourself. and draw your own conclusions. And if you think that anything that I said about it was disingenuous, you can go watch it for yourself and you can call me out for it. Basically, what the video was that this person linked to me was an artist drew a sketch of a character. It was the character Pocoyo. That's like another character who is owned by this company. I don't think it was originally created by them. I think they bought it out, but it's just a character that's owned by this company. So the artist would draw the character in 2D in a pose, and then the pose would immediately translate to the 3D model. So the process in between that is very crucial, because what I want to know that the video didn't really explain to me is what happens in between the sketch and the 3D model that pops out. Is it that the sketch goes into a 3D model that has a specific amount of bones and a specific way of making a facial expression that is already set up and lined up, and then all it does is it moves the pose into the bones that are close to the sketch, and it designs the face based on the sketch in a way that is consistent with the model that already exists? Because I think if the process is what I just described it, I don't think I have an issue with that morally. I could get into some ways that could possibly weaken a product. But I could say that about CGI. I could say that about a lot of things that I don't think should be banned. It's just it's like, if you use electronic music, it's like electronic music. You could be really useful if you put in the right notes and you design it with human intent, but also at the same time, there is an importance to real instruments and all that sort of stuff. Like it just seems like that's like fine if that is what it does. Now, if what it does is it goes through people say haphazardly goes through the internet. That's actually not what AI does. AI goes through a lot of training data is actually what it does. But if it goes through a large amount of training data and then it tries to create a thing based off of all of this training data and your sketch, that's where it crosses a line. I don't know if that's what it does. And I feel like that's not what it does, because that would be silly if that's what it does, because that's less efficient than the first thing I said. The first thing I said was that it goes through models that you made. You have all these models, you have a couple of models, and then you do the sketch, and the sketch takes the model and the model goes into that pose, and that's easier to do than moving the model. That makes more sense than it scours massive data sets, and that gives more control to the artist. I don't think an artist is going to want it to go through massive data sets, because they're not going to get what they're looking for. That's what people complain about with AI, is they get random stuff. They're like, what is that? But if it's with this more rigid thing, like I feel like they're going to want it to be the first thing. So I'm going to assume that the thing that it is the first thing that I said, that it is not using a massive data set. And if I am incorrect, I condemn the technology for that reason. But I'm going to go with it that it's the first thing, that it's the less sensational thing, that it's the thing that basically would make me say that Ozzy Fox as a show is a valid piece of art. Again, I don't think it's as good as Bluey, but that's basically it. At that point, it's just comparing one thing that didn't do as good of a job as another thing. It's no different than when I criticize modern SpongeBob as opposed to classic SpongeBob. I don't think that modern SpongeBob is invalid as an art form. I just think that there are some shortcomings to modern SpongeBob, but it's still art. It's just that something else did it better. My criticisms of Ozzy Fox would begin and end there. They really would. And if that was the case, I wouldn't even talk about Ozzy Fox. Why would I talk about Ozzy Fox, a random preschool show? Is that what I'm covering these days? I barely have time to cover things that are way bigger than a random preschool show. And that brings me to like my biggest issue here. why are we calling this AI? Why are we calling this process that, to my understanding, just takes a thing that someone drew and then it takes 3D models that they made and it just matches the 3D model to the thing that the person drew? Why are we calling that artificial intelligence? Even the fact that AI is not AI, like that an LLM that generates an image is not AI, even the fact that that is not AI. But even that, the phrasing of AI can at least make a little bit of sense. Intelligence, the idea of calling this thing that generates an image intelligence. I get the logic there. I could poke some holes in it. I do think that it is fallacious thinking. I do think that it's not what we should call it. I think the train has left the station on that being what we call it. I think we're going to call it that for forever. But like the idea of, oh, I get it. The thing thinks for you. The thing makes the thing on its own. That's what makes it intelligence. That is not what the Animaj thing, as it's been described to me, does. It just isn't, because it's not really doing it for you. It's moving something in a certain way that you did for it. Does some of it for you, but so does any tool. And I would call this a tool, at least if it works how I think it works from what I saw. Why would they do that? Because you would think that with the backlash to AI in the arts, that this company or Disney or whoever is making this show, this Ozzy Fox, and they developed this technology to make their workflow faster in a way that I think has some validity to it. We'll get to some criticisms. I also have M here to give a more artistic approach to where there could be problems with that. We will discuss that in a bit. But all in all, something that increases their workflow and still preserves the artistic intent. And they created this technology. Why call it AI? Like, why? Like, wouldn't you think that it'd be the other way around? That they're like, oh, this is a thing that we don't have to call AI because it's so not like AI. We can just not call it AI. And yay. So isn't it weird that they wanted to call it AI? Now, there's kind of an obvious answer. It's because while AI makes a lot of people mad, AI is also a buzzword. It gets investors. It gets all this sort of, the AI bubble, all that sort of stuff. Like AI is a big word right now for business. So by using AI, by calling the thing AI because it just meets that threshold of being considered AI, it can bump up certain numbers for them stocks wise. But I do think that the real reason is it's normalizing AI that we would not want to see. I really don't like when words don't mean things. It's pretty annoying. I was listening to George Carlin not too long ago, and there was this one bit from George Carlin where he was saying that he was at an airport and he was complaining about how they say, "We will now begin the boarding process." And he's saying, you don't need to say process. You can just say, "We will now begin the boarding." Process just tries to make it sound more official. And I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here, where it's like, this is just a thing that, moves a 3D model. It's just a way of putting a 3D model into a specific spot. You don't need to call it AI. You're just calling it AI to make it sound more futuristic. But what you're also doing by calling it AI is that you're obfuscating when things that are actually AI start to get used. You're obfuscating when the process does go through a data set and generate something because you're already normalizing it with this. But I think another thing is that with like a preschool show, it's like an average person isn't really going to cover it. There's going to be this barrier. Even I felt that, where it's like, if it were like a regular kids show, if it were like a show that was like for SpongeBob's age group, but it was this AI produced, it would get a lot more attention. There'd be a lot more guys like me talking about it. So I think they wanted a little less attention on it, but they also wanted the headlines to say that it was AI produced. And this all leads into a big soup of misinformation that just causes people to draw no other conclusion than, well, AI was there and it looks fine. Guess I was wrong. And then they start to get away with it. And I also think that that's contributing to why it's taking down videos of it, using just that this Ozzy Fox preschool show. If there's any footage of it in someone's video, they're going to take it down. I think that that's just easier to get away with because it was a preschool show. But something else that this person talked about was, where is it? This is what the commenter claims. So I can't speak to all of the truth of this, but apparently with Animaj, there's some kind of AI model that simply reads trends and who interacts with them to better find a target audience, which might explain why their Ozzy the Fox includes a toilet video. Quite common among kids' content farms on YouTube. Again, it feels like a sort of thing that is like more so advanced search than like AI LLM. Again, I'm in favor of advanced search. I like if this is as described, this AI model that reads trends and who interacts with them, and you just go into a computer program and it goes through a lot of data and just gives you an answer based on that data. I don't think that's super terrible. But again, they're calling it like AI, AI. And I guess like advanced search is like with AI, it's really confusing. I hate the term AI and where it's going with it. It's all over the place. But that is another thing about Animaj, is that they are in favor of some kind of, I guess, AI model, for lack of a better term. I'd probably rather not call it an AI model that reads trends and who interacts with them. That might not be the worst thing in the world, although I can think of an immediate clear issue with that, which is that it's going to, like, something like that would lead to, it's kind of like with focus groups where everything is going to be for the lowest common denominator. Only things that come off as their trends get picked up by this technology, and it tells the creators that those are trends, then those creators do it more, and it just becomes a vicious cycle. I do think that that is an obvious issue with something like that. But that issue is more so with the results of that sort of thing, not so much that it's AI or that it removes human intent from the arts, because that's not actually what the issue would be. It would still have human intent when you create the thing based on what this model tells you is the trends. It's just that the trends that would be chosen would come from the lowest common denominator. It's really like, it's the same problem that like focus groups have, just on a much larger scale. Again, it's something that could be useful, but we would need to use it responsibly, and knowing the human race, we probably wouldn't use it responsibly. Okay, so here's like kind of the line that I want to draw. That's a very difficult line to figure out, but once you do, it's very clear where the rigid line is. And this is just the line between valid and invalid art. And it's basically, if the thing that you are using to create the art, does it take away a person doing a thing that human intent is necessary for? So this applies to choosing color schemes. Colors invoke emotions, invoke feelings. Colors mean things. These need to always be chosen by people. Because if they're not chosen by people, applied broadly, we are going to get weaker interactions with the colors in media. This leads to social consequences. Facial expressions of characters. Facial expressions of characters are meant to invoke an emotional response. We as human beings understand what faces mean, what faces communicate to people. We reflect that in art. Having AI do that removes that broadly over the entire media landscape. This leads to negative social consequences and a more antisocial population. That is why I think that generative AI should be illegal for these sorts of things. We have a vested interest as humanity to not have that. Basically, anything that is like created, a background, a character, words, the actual things that characters say, music, of course, all these things should not be like created by a computer. They require human intent. And that's really the line. And then from there, we can have conversations about, is it going to harm the final process? So CGI has had negative consequences on movies, but I don't think CGI should be banned. I just think we need to use CGI responsibly. Like, so many movies wanting to CGI in a monster or a sort of thing that would have been before CGI a puppet. Jaws is kind of the big example. Like the reason that Jaws succeeded so much as a movie is because not only because they used a real shark animatronic that was controlled in a certain way, but also because that shark animatronic broke and they had to film around it and they had to tell the story in a way where you were still afraid of this shark even though you didn't see it very often. If Jaws was made in 2026, it would have been a CGI shark and the movie would have it wouldn't have resonated in the same way. Again, this does not mean ban CGI. This just means that we have to learn from why Jaws was successful, and then we have to, with access to technology that would not force us to do so, make the active decision to prioritize the story of what we are creating, to prioritize the art form of what we are creating. And I think that we can apply this principle to what this technology is that I refuse to call AI because if I think it's valid, I don't want to call it AI. But this technology that Animaj has used to make this Ozzy Fox, and why perhaps they did not utilize this technology responsibly, and that led to some of the shortcomings in the Ozzy Fox cartoon. I'm going to get M on here. M is an artist. She knows this stuff better than me. She drew my guy behind me. And yeah, I want her to give her input on what might be taken away from this sort of thing.
When you train in storyboard animation and all that, one of the things you see when you study that is how much of artistic freedom that you get. If you take a look at the shot in the Amazing Digital Circus, you can see a few times where the animators went rogue, where they had the storyboard that was drawn by another department to help the animators pre-plan what was going on, and they just do their own thing, and I think that's really cool to see artists all coming together on a project and giving their own inputs, because it shows the different experiences of the art of the artist, and you lose that when you tell a computer, hey, take my pose and make it exactly. Yeah, but there's a possibility that this could be useful, but overall it's just going to limit us, and that's not good.
So I'd say, to wrap up with the big problems here, is first off that misinformation is being spread to further normalize the use of AI in the arts. And it's being done in a way where they're pushing something that doesn't even really use AI. Again, there could be some issues with this technology. It's definitely in the same vein of like AI. Like it is this same issue of, okay, how do we speed up the process without considering what you might lose? That is something that I can be critical of this technology for. Again, I don't think that it's completely invalid technology. The problems that that M was talking about that I agree with is that you can lose out on certain parts of the creative process by moving the sketch directly to the 3D model in this way. And it also can severely limit you. But at the same time, just like how if you made Jaws today and understood that a CGI shark would not be as impactful and made decisions around that, you could probably responsibly use this technology and then understand, okay, great. So this technology limits me. There's a limitation to it. There's only these sorts of movements that it will do. It's only going to move the model in certain ways. All right, here are our limitations. Great. Now let's, as artists, now that we've assessed these limitations, let's look at times where we can go back to the old way of animating in certain key moments so that we can still have big movements, all this sort of stuff. I think that the biggest issue with something like this is that you might be thinking, even as I just said what I said, I was almost thinking, oh yeah, so like this technology can be used for the movements that aren't important. And then the movements that are important, we can go ham with the animation. But here's the problem. In animation, every single movement should be important. Every single thing that happens should be important. It's like with writing, AI writing, people think this, where they're like, oh, well, like I'm just going to have AI do the parts of the writing that don't matter. I'm just going to have AI make the structure and then I do the real stuff. And this implies that there are parts of a script, that there are parts of a story that are like filler, that are unnecessary. And then the parts that the artist does are the parts that are like the big moments. But that's actually not how a story works. In a story, everything that is said by a character is important. If it's not, you should just cut it out. You just shouldn't even have it. So animation might be that way too. I think this almost leans us into an idea that it's like, oh, well, like this technology will just do the parts of the animation that don't matter. Well, it all matters. It all should matter. And again, we see this with not AI. This is not even an AI problem. This is Family Guy. Family Guy has this problem where Family Guy, the models of the characters have specific movements and most scenes in Family Guy are just like characters sitting in a room and like kind of moving sometimes and like this and that, and all that. And then every so often it does a more spectacle moment. Every so often it does something for a joke that's a little more specific with the animation. Like this is not just an AI problem. It's just that the attitude that leads to this problem is the same problem that is related to all of this AI stuff. And the other big issue is that it's just muddying the term of AI and just like throwing it all out there. It's very weird. It's all very weird. Yeah, surprising. Well, I hope they bring my video back, the original one. Not I'll release one that is edited. If the original video is back or if I had to upload a new one, I'm going to link it in the description. So go check it out and see if it's there. Still a lot of misinformation out there. I don't know if I've cleared up everything, but at least I tried.